This is episode 1143.
Purposefully, when we kicked off our transformation effort earlier in the year, we were working with a large consulting partner, and they wanted to bring AI in right out of the gate. And I said, this organization is not ready yet. We need to just focus on some of the basics first, and then bring AI into the fold. And now we're really going down the path on AI with that. We need everybody aware. We need everybody understanding what tools are available, how to use them, experimenting in some way, shape, or form. And then we need more focused efforts. So we've identified what we call ambassadors, and they're going to work as a group to bring, and it's cross-functional, both within finance, but then more broadly at the Kelly level. We have a similar concept, and they bring ideas forward. So we're collecting all that information. We're enabling the organization. We've identified people, and we're just continue scaling it up and up and up as we become more proficient.
When a company's story stretches back nearly 80 years, transformation doesn't come easy. Yet that's exactly what Kelly Services is attempting, reshaping a legacy staffing firm into a data-driven workforce solutions company. What caught our attention about CFO Troy Anderson isn't just his resume of past transformations. It's how he keeps stepping into complexity and seeking out clarity. In our conversation, Troy reveals how finance leaders can build structure out of chaos, lead through integrations that never seem to end, and prepare their teams for reinvention. Our talk with CFO Troy Anderson begins after this.
It's planning season again. Do you feel prepared? You're not alone. Many finance pros like you feel the pressure this time of year. But with the right tools, it really doesn't have to be so stressful. Introducing the annual planning checklist from Planful, a game changer for your 2026 financial planning process. With this checklist, you'll stay organized, reduce errors, and maintain confidence throughout the planning season, setting you and your team up for a successful year ahead. Don't let planning season get the better of you this time. Get ahead of 2026 by downloading the annual planning checklist from Planful now.
Hello, CFO Troy Anderson is with us. Troy's finance career spans more than 30 years in multiple industries, from his early grounding in public accounting to leadership roles at MCI, Sprint Nextel, and Xerox. Along the way, he helped navigate Conduent spin-off from Xerox and later guided Universal Technical Institute through a sweeping transformation. Today at Kelly Services, Troy oversees the company's global finance organization as it advances a strategy to focus on specialty talent solutions in workforce transformation. We look forward to learning more about that. Hey, Troy, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Troy, you've had an exciting career, just the number of variety of companies you've been involved in. But take us back. I know it began in public accounting. I think that's a familiar track that we have with many finance leaders. Where did yours begin? Where did you begin to get, on that leadership track, if you were to go all the way back?
Yeah, well, as you said, with over 30 years experience, it's been a journey. My first manager role was all the way back in almost 30 years ago, actually, and where I actually had a manager title and managed people. But there were a few moments, I'd say, that really positioned me as a senior finance leader over my career. The Sprint Nextel you mentioned was really just an amazing 5-year experience, initially with Nextel, and really fast-growing, innovative company, very product-focused, had just an amazing product at the time, the push-to-talk phones, and some really creative marketing. And so it really gave me that exposure to that product and marketing focus. But my roles really spanned, I really grew, I'd say, with that company and the experience there. Most of the people I work with have gone on to be C-suite leaders, both in the finance side and business people. And then going through that Sprint Nextel merger, where I ultimately became a director of corporate FP&A for now the combined much larger entity. So that was really my first real direct engagement with the C-suite. And we had some challenges post that merger and integration, and getting some real deep exposure to working through some challenges there. So that was, one real, I'd say, span of experience.
When you stepped out of
that
public
positioned me.
accounting, was it what was the first industry title maybe that you had? Were you in with the accounting folks, or were you already a finance manager? What were you?
No, so I did 5 years in public accounting. I started in a smaller regional firm in Maryland, and then I moved into Coopers and Lybrand, which was at the time, part of the Big Six, now Big Four, obviously. And so about 5 years, as you said, and then I moved into an internal audit role in the telecom industry, at the time Bell Atlantic, which was one of the local carriers at the time. And I was pursuing my MBA during that time as well. It was very difficult to do that while I was in public accounting and working the hours and having to be flexible for clients, et cetera. So I finished my MBA, and then I went to MCI, and that's where I became a manager, and then moved on from there.
Yeah, these are there were a variety of industries that you advanced through, really. And I'm wondering, were there common leadership threads here where you proved yourself time and again? What's the commonality between these different industries and the executive that you were?
I spent, if I break down the industry, really I spent a dozen years in the telecom industry. So public accounting, then about a dozen years in the telecom industry, which was going through a major transformation as an industry, deregulation, the local and the long distance carriers merging together, wireless and wireline merging together. So I went through that whole span. And then about a dozen years in business services. So that was the Affiliated Computer Services and Xerox, and then Conduent, really 3 iterations of the same company over about a dozen years. I wouldn't say there's necessarily commonality there. I wanted to move out of more of an industry that, again, was more product and end user focused. I wanted to move more into business, managing a full P&L, managing a business. The telecom companies tended to be structured more along the lines of functions. Customer service and the different in-market groups and engineering, those types of things, and of course the support functions around that. But I really wanted to get in and get kind of full P&L management exposure, which in the business services side, we ran all basically the vertical units where the business units were aligned by verticals, and then we had finance leaders assigned to them. And so I was able to really now look at managing a business end-to-end, early stage pipeline opportunities on the deal side, the sales side, all the way through to mature contracts and long-term customer relationships, and optimizing along the way.
Are you part of the business partner mindset? Did they have cultures where finance was really partnering with the business? How would you describe, as you mentioned your FP&A stripes? You were involved with a lot of strategic decision making along the way, and I'm wondering if from one company to the next, the partnering with the business was a priority.
Yeah, that's been fundamental to how I've operated throughout my career, and with the designation as a business partner, when I was inside the business, whether it was during those times at, say, Sprint Nextel, where I was the business partner to the CIO and the head of product development initially, and then when I moved into the business services side, I was a business partner to the business unit leaders. And I've taken that mindset to now the CFO chair. I'm the business partner to the CEO. I'm the business partner to the business unit leaders and the functional leaders, the full C-suite. And I tell them that. I say, hey, look, I'm here to make us collectively successful and be your partner and really drive the business forward. And we have to all be together doing that.
So can you share with us, your exposure to CFOs along the way? These are large companies. quite a few of the finance leaders who we speak to have had experiences in more entrepreneurial environments. You're the wide body organizations, many of these. And, how did you get exposure to the CFO's decision making? And there were times where, hey, let Troy get in on this meeting so we can talk to, put our heads together. Whatever it might be, your exposure to CFOs earlier in your career.
Yeah, it was usually my first true corporate CFO exposure was really at that Sprint Nextel when I was the director of corporate FP&A. Prior to that, it was usually more a business unit CFO type of exposure, and even when I moved into the business services stage of my career, initially it was more the next leader up who I reported to, with some exposure to the corporate CFO. The next big change, I would say, really was my role in investor relations at Xerox.
Nice.
So, where I was in the room with Kathy Michaels, the CFO at Xerox at the time, who was a relatively new CFO at Xerox. She had joined a few months before I moved into investor relations. She's now the CFO at ExxonMobil. And Ursula Burns, who's a very well-known, former CEO, career at Xerox and board member and the like. And so working extensively with them and again, the executive leadership team, and really telling that Xerox story. And then, of course, from there, had significant, when we spun out as Conduent, I was the senior finance leader reporting to the CFO and was in the inner circle with the CEO, CFO, general counsel. And so really that IR role was really the game changer for me from a career perspective. It just completely changed my trajectory, and elevated me to the level that ultimately allowed me to get the job at Universal Technical Institute and now at Kelly.
Wow. So can I ask you about the spin-off of Conduent, where, you were vice president of global finance and a corporate controller? I mean, were you part of that team that spun that out?
Yeah. So we, there was about a year-long effort to create the spin-out company and to do the carve-out. So Xerox had acquired a company, Affiliated Computer Services, which is the company I was originally with, which was a services company, and then Xerox, of course, was in print and had been moving more into the services space, which was the theory behind the thesis behind the acquisition of sort of no-name $6 billion global footprint business services company being acquired by $8 billion Xerox, which was declining, but had this global brand, and so bringing those two companies together in a who's who of client list, the thesis was there was a great growth opportunity. That ultimately didn't pan out that well, so there wasn't a lot of integration because the companies were still run somewhat separately, although there was some leadership integration and things along those lines. So the carve out itself was not highly technically complex. We were still on a separate general ledger, for example. There were some systems that had been commingled. It was more around the cap structure. We had to raise $2 billion in debt, which was funding basically back into Xerox and funding some of the day one working capital. And then we had to build out the public company infrastructure. We didn't have a public company CEO and CFO and all the reporting frameworks in place to meet the SEC guidelines, et cetera. So we had to build out the team. We had to build our headquarters. We started in Regis rental office facilities. I was in one office over here, and CEO was in another office down the hall around the corner, and the CFO was, and there was all these other people mixed in between from other companies, onesie twosie type of things. And then we ultimately built a corporate headquarters in Florham Park, New Jersey, and then built out the teams. We had a lot of the operating teams, but we didn't have that corporate. We didn't have a tax leader and an IR leader and a treasury leader and those types of things. So all of that had to be built out, and then we were off to the races from there.
Wait, did you? For opportunities that found you, are you raising your hand? Tell us something about yourself. Did you have to, at times, and who doesn't, I suppose, have to assert themselves and say, let me take this on? Do you, as you look back over your career, were you that person, or was it sort of There's a variety of different ways of expressing it, but you became a go-to person because they knew you could get things done.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I would say earlier on it was probably more, hey, Troy's a go-to person. Let's move him over here. But I started becoming a little more purposeful about developing opportunities when I was at MCI and ultimately WorldCom. Moved out of my initial role there and into another role that gave me more exposure. When I was at Nextel and then Sprint Nextel, immediately after the merger, I was in a similar role to what I was previously. And then the corporate FP&A opportunity came along, and I raised my hand for that. And similarly, the IR opportunity at Xerox, that sort of found me. I got a phone call one day. I was actually attending a friend's sister's funeral, and I got a phone call on my way home that day. It was, kind of a depressing day, and I got this phone call. Hey, Troy, we're thinking about you. Xerox needs somebody in IR and corporate headquarters in Connecticut. I was in Maryland. And your name came up. It's a rotational role, and your name came up as somebody they'd like to talk to about it. And so that was, again, a fantastic opportunity for me. And then from there, it's been more, very purposeful. Well, they placed me into another role that then became the spin out to Xerox. And
was that phone call from an executive recruiter? Just to clarify, was that from okay.
No, it was internal. It was internal.
Okay.
Yeah, they were looking for somebody out of the services side of the business, the acquired company, not the legacy Xerox side. So most of Xerox corporate headquarters was all legacy Xerox people. There really had not been any blending of the two companies, and so they were really. I was one of the first people that they that had the opportunity to now blend in the acquired services business into the corporate Xerox organization.
Well, combined, between Xerox and the spin-off Conduent, you were there, 5-7 years?
No, a total of 12. Oh. So I started at ACS, Affiliated Computer Services, in 2007, and then ultimately left Conduent in 2019 when I took the Universal Technical Institute job. So it was 3 iterations of the same services company, standalone ACS, embedded inside of Xerox as Xerox Services, and then spun back out again as Conduent.
For our audience and who are interested in your career building and how Troy did it, you had opportunities perhaps for other companies, other jobs. Recruiters undoubtedly called you from, midway through your career on up. They must have been calling. And often you said, no, thanks. Tell us something about your decision making. What made an opportunity attractive to you, and what made you say no thanks at times?
Yeah, I've done a lot of interviewing over my career. I always trying to think about what that next step might be, and so I rarely turn down a phone call, and they always seem to come in waves. Yeah. Head down working, and then all of a sudden get a phone call, and then a few weeks later another phone call, and I was really focused on trying to get to a CFO role, and especially as I moved out of the starting maybe 15 years or so ago, thought, okay, well, need to get going here. Let's get that CFO role, so I wouldn't say I definitely have turned down opportunities. I probably interviewed for way more opportunities than I ultimately had the opportunity to turn down, but it really had to be the right thing. And I actually did a recent post on LinkedIn about something along these lines, which is you've really got to go with what feels right to you. You can't just take a job just because it's there, or maybe they're going to pay you a little bit more money. I did turn down a job several times actually, because it just wasn't the right fit. The situation, either where the company was or what I thought it could ultimately lead to from a next step perspective, even if it was more money at the time. You really have to play the long game when you're thinking about your career.
No, that's great. So think about not just this step, but the next step. Where is it going to get you after that? Yeah. And you don't want to be caught down in it.
And how does it align with your values? What the company or the situation as well.
Well, Troy, you do have a long career path. We might have a few more career related questions a little later for you, but the fact is it was 2024. You were named, of course, CFO of Kelly Services, a company that goes back in time. I didn't realize that back to 1946 or the mid 1940s. Interesting. However, it's been undergoing quite a transformation as of recent last 5 years, even. Tell us about this company, Kelly Services, today. What's happening here?
Yeah. So if I could just 1 second go back and say, at my prior company, Universal Technical Institute, we went through a major transformation. We more than doubled the company, expanded the offerings. It was a career skills training company, public company, and $100 million market caps, now $1.5 billion, and expanded into healthcare, expanded more broadly into trades, grew both organically and inorganically. Things are great. Really was situated well. Had been there 5 years. Had led the finance team through a major transformation to support that scale. And then to our earlier discussion about decisions and what fit, I was thinking about, well, is this where I finish my career? Do I think about what maybe might be next? And if I were to make a change, what might it be? And it would be something larger, global scale, back more maybe in the services space. Needing somebody like me to help lead some transformation activity. And so the opportunity at Kelly came along. They had over 5 years, had done a number of acquisitions, had done some divestitures as well, had really invested in the business, had done a major SG&A takeout, and so had expanded margins, more than doubling the margins. And so it was a great opportunity to really take everything I've done over my career and apply it in this one place now with Kelly. To your point, great legacy, been around almost 80 years now, great offerings, well-known brand, and we had a CFO transition, and now we have a CEO transition. So a new CEO started at the beginning of September. Both of them retired, so it was a design succession. And really what we're focused on now is we spent almost $1 billion in acquisitions. Not much of that was integrated, and so we're going through a pretty significant integration effort, both from a go-to-market and business-facing, customer-facing organizational perspective, as well as from a back office and finance perspective. And so we're going through transformations on both sides of the ledger, if you will, and really trying to maximize the returns on those assets and weather a bit of a storm. The staffing and labor markets have been a bit challenged, more so on the temporary staffing side than what you see in the broader labor market. But when you see there's a lot of talk, obviously, about the labor markets these days, and we see that in the staffing industry. The industry's been in decline for about 2 years now, and so we have to have an agile model that allows us to flex up and down based upon the needs of our clients and the opportunities that are out there. And so that's part of what we're trying to build towards as well, both from an organizational model perspective as well as from a technology perspective.
So how do you measure progress in this kind of multi-phase transformation?
Well, specifically in the finance organization, we have a basically a 2 to 3 year roadmap that we're executing upon. We have a whole set of initiatives. We embarked on so I spent about 2 months in transition. I was the CFO delegate. My predecessor, as I mentioned, was retiring. We finished out the Q3 report, and then took a few weeks after that to affect the final transition. So I became CFO in December of last year. Actually, yesterday was my 1 year anniversary with joining Kelly. So this is a very timely conversation. But and so, of course, my initial focus was closing out the year and building the relationships and getting the lay of the land of the company, both from a people and offerings perspective and clients, et cetera. And then we quickly pivoted to moving more down the transformation path with the finance organization. Frankly, the finance team had lagged in doing some of that relative to some of the business side. And again, they had told me that, and that was one of the reasons why they were interested in in me joining the company, given some of the success I had had both at Conduent and Universal Technical Institute with finance transformations. So we went through an assessment process. We engaged the leaders and a number of people from across the team. So we made it a broader effort. It wasn't just Troy coming in and saying, here's what we're going to do. I was collecting their information and their perspectives around what was working, what wasn't working, and we built out a set of initiatives and roadmaps. We've established a target operating model that we're striving to achieve. Some of that is technology dependent, so we're also going through not just in finance but across the enterprise a technology modernization effort, which includes new ERP solution. I mentioned the acquisitions and not being integrated. So we run on multiple ERPs, and so that creates a lot of inefficiency in the finance organization in particular. And so we have a set of initiatives we're executing from a people and process perspective, and then we have technology initiatives as well. And of course, AI is a critical component of that as we move forward. And rapidly, that's a rapidly evolving area that we see more and more opportunity to leverage.
Within the finance function, did you change the organization at all? Did you deploy your people in different ways?
Yeah, so I've done some changes at the leadership levels, and frankly, it's been a bit more opportunistic as we've had a few people opt out of the organization. And my chief accounting officer is retiring here at the end of the year, so I had an opportunity to replace one of my senior leaders, and that was a way to rethink some of the organizational model. And actually, we've redeployed her into now basically a consultant on the ERP project, given the institutional knowledge and expertise that she brings, and she's really flourishing in that role. So that's one change. I've elevated another person to more of an enterprise finance leader. That was not a role that existed. It was combined with the chief accounting officer role, and I felt like that really needed to be separate, which is similar to roles I played in my past. And so those changes just were affected this summer, and then we've had some other changes underneath of that in light of, again, some folks moving on to other opportunities outside the company, and that's enabled us to actually accelerate some organizational changes, and we're working on now realigning the organization more around global process areas like record to report, plan to perform, quote to cash, et cetera. We had, through our assessment process, we identified that there was a lot of people involved across a number of different organizations, and so we're trying to get those tasks in functions more consolidated with discrete ownership by the chief accounting officer, by the enterprise finance leader, et cetera, by a shared services leader, so that we can drive efficiencies end to end in those processes, which was more challenging with them fragmented across teams and systems.
Right. So the strategy, from what I understand, centers on shifting the revenue mix toward higher margin segments, such as education and science, engineering, and technology. What financial indicators best demonstrate the success so far in executing that shift?
Yeah, so the best indicator is really outside views. So we have there's industry analysts, Everest, and SIA is another industry group that does a lot of data collection and measurement of market share and rankings of quality of offerings. And so we've had a number of industry recognitions of late. Everest has this peak matrix, and they have different qualifications, sort of like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, that they do for solutions, finance solutions, et cetera. And so some of our solutions have been identified as either leaders and or star performers in Everest rankings. Just recently, we've increased our market share significantly in the areas you outlined: information technology, engineering, life sciences, telecom. So we're a top player, industrial, light industrial, managed service provider, we're a top player. So really looking at that outside view, looking in of how to measure where we stand. So we acquired a lot of scale through the acquisition and portfolio remixing over the years that has occurred. And education really is a really differentiator for Kelly when you look at Kelly relative to some of the other talent and workforce solutions companies. We're a dominant player there. We're the number one provider of substitute teachers in the United States, and we have extended that into in-school therapeutic offerings as well. So providing certified therapists to schools, and that's a really growing market. We're taking share in a growing market. Again, measuring by other standards, not just our own internal measures. And then we're building out a balanced scorecard for internal measures as well, with our new CEO, Chris Layden, coming on board. One of the initiatives that we're already embarking upon is really building out that balanced scorecard, a consistent set of operating and financial performance metrics across the business. We really had been running in a very decentralized fashion, and so we're trying to bring some of that back and look at things more consistently across the business, again, to drive more scale and efficiency as a company.
Can you share or reflect a little on for us your mindset when it comes to capital allocation, deciding where to invest, where to hold back, how to ensure any bets being placed align with the overall objectives, your role, finances role? Can you reflect a little on how you might have you adopted a new mindset or enhanced it with your own past experience?
Yeah, certainly capital allocation is a key function for the CFO, and finance plays a critical role in that. Extensively it was interesting. It's been different, right? It's based on companies and their priorities. And so if you think about Conduent, right, we had to go raise the debt, and we had to service that debt as part of the spin out, and really didn't have a lot of capital to deploy in terms of acquisitions, return to shareholder at the time. I'm not speaking to what they may be doing now, but while I was there. So our focus was really driving the business, investing in the business. So our primary focus on capital allocation was CapEx, because we needed to affect the transformation of the company, our technology infrastructure, and really a lot of integration of acquisitions that had not been done previously, and then just service the debt. So that was really expanding profitability, growing and expanding profitability, so we could service the debt and then and invest in the business. We did some small acquisitions, but nothing major there. Pivot to Universal Technical Institute. We went on a huge we went to market twice to raise capital from an equity perspective. We secured a $100 million credit facility, so raised several $100 million in capital over the span of 5 years, and we're deploying that capital towards acquisitions and organic growth expansions, and it paid off wildly as again, more than doubled the company from just over 300 million in revenue to 800 million in revenue, and significantly expanded profitability and market cap along with that. We were under it's a very cash generative business, and we were always under pressure from shareholders. And of course, we had a lot of new shareholders coming in as the story was evolving, and we were going to market raising capital. Always looking for share repurchase, or not as much on the dividend side, but more from a share buyback perspective. And we kept our focus really more on that, investing and growing the business. We had a 5-year plan, and then launched another 5-year plan shortly before I left, which they're executing upon currently. And then at Kelly, it's we have a dividend, and it's not significant, but it's there. 30 cents a share. We of course have the company spent almost $1 billion in acquisition, raised capital both through debt and through divestitures. And as we sit here today, similar conversation about, okay, where do we go next? This is really 2025 is really our first, I would say, clean year of cash flow generation. We had acquired, our last major acquisition was, and the biggest acquisition Kelly's done, was last summer, or summer in 24, $500 million IT services business, purchased for about $450 million. The company took out debt, which is not done previously, about $240 million in debt. And so really focused on more paying down that debt in the short term. There's a lot of macro, of course, noise out there this year. We're a very macro sensitive business, based upon all the industries we serve. And again, the flex in the labor forces that's out there. And so really what we're focused on right now has been more debt, service. We've maintained the dividend, and we've done some share repurchase. We did $10 million in the fourth quarter of last year. We have an authorization out there for $50 million in total, of which $10 million we've executed against. And then we're an asset light business, so real CapEx is not as significant for us, 15, 20 million a year maybe. So really ours is more about where do we go next? Do we go down more of a balanced path of return to shareholder and investing for growth? We more focus on investing for growth and continued remix on the portfolio. And so we're in a bit of a evaluating stage, I would say, with Kelly right now.
We want to touch on AI with you, and I know Kelly's invested in digital talent platforms and AI enhanced matching. From your perspective, what defines, let's say, a smart AI investment versus, one that's more speculative, perhaps?
Yeah, it's the AI journey. It feels like changes almost every day at this point. But I think we're focused on it within certainly the finance organization. We're focused on it across Kelly. I'd say Kelly. One of the things that impressed me when I was interviewing with Kelly was some of the work they had already done as far as establishing a governance model and cross-functional teams to do some early evaluations and pilots and the like. And so we've expanded upon that. We have dedicated leader in the AI space. So if you think about the recruiting life cycle, for example, it's just ripe with use case opportunities to inject AI. There's so much data and there's so much process and transaction of activity. Think about job descriptions and callbacks and scheduling and just all these different things that can be done. So we're doing a lot of work in that space as far as automation and looking at opportunities. There's point solutions. We have our own internal model that we've developed and leverages some of the big name models out there. It's hard to know right now. I mean, it's dangerous if you're not a technology company and you don't have a lot of money to spend. It's you have to be a bit selective about where you really invest versus sort of trial and error. I'd say we're investing in some cases and we're doing more trial and error, more small nibbles in other cases. So there's a lot of things you can speculate on. Some companies have gone all in. They're spending billions and billions of dollars. We don't have that kind of money. So it's hard to say what's a good investment or a bad investment. I mean, you need to be working on it. You need to be trying a lot of different solutions, both at the enterprise level, at really 3 levels is how we think about it. Enterprise level, so think your ERP, some of the tools you use that are more broadly, they're all on AI journeys, right? So as they AI enable their solutions, we need to be leveraging that and taking advantage of the work they're doing because they're spending billions of dollars. Then there's more like team level, different functional. So the recruiting function, for example, as I mentioned, there's a whole set of use cases that are there. And again, different solutions we can leverage both at the enterprise level and more point. And then at the individual level, across the organization, you want everybody experimenting and leveraging even just the common chat GPT tools and others that are out there, Claude, et cetera. Of course, they need to be doing it safe. There have to be guardrails and governance. You can't be putting private data in public domains and the like. But you want everybody in the organization at least experimenting with AI, even if it's just in their personal life.
Is there something
but trying to find ways that we can get
that
more
the company's
efficiency
doing? I mean, AI adoption, as you were just touching on, I think often requires new skill sets. People have to approach it differently. Some people are, become early champions. Others do not. Others are laggards. How do you approach this sort of upskilling and change management? Is there something initiatives that the company has to awaken the organization and, reward those who are demonstrating, blazing the path for others?
Yeah, Yeah, that's exactly it. We have enterprise education initiatives. We run lunch and learn type sessions. So just for general awareness, we've done workshops at the executive level where we had people come in and we built a company in 4 hours using ChatGPT. You know, there's a lot of different exercises that you can do. We've done that down into different organizations. Within finance, it's interesting. We purposefully, when we kicked off our transformation effort earlier in the year, we were working with a large consulting partner, and they wanted to bring AI in right out of the gate. And I said, this organization is not ready yet. We need to just focus on some of the basics first, and then bring AI into the fold. And now we're really going down the path on AI with that. We need everybody aware. We need everybody understanding what tools are available, how to use them, experimenting in some way, shape, or form. And then we need more focused efforts. So we've identified what we call ambassadors, and they're going to work as a group to bring, and it's cross-functional, both within finance, but then more broadly at the Kelly level. We have a similar concept, and they bring ideas forward. We enable them with some of the tools that we pilot, right? So we're not just going out and buying tools. We're doing a lot of pilots. And so we enable them with some of the tools, and with an expectation they're going to come back and say, well, I used it for this, it worked well. I used it for that, didn't work so great. I found this one worked better for that. So we're collecting all that information. We're enabling the organization. We've identified people, and we're just continue scaling it up and up and up as we become more proficient, and some of the use case identification becomes more mature. But ultimately, we want it being leveraged by everybody in some way, shape, or form across the organization.
Where just you mentioned there's integrations are underway, but where are you on that journey? These acquisitions and integrating them in and creating this, plus size enterprise.
Yeah. So a lot of I would say, business integration. So the business teams we've done a lot of that integration this year. And the back office integration, at least it all reports to me. Some of the organizational changes I mentioned earlier, they are the people. Some of the people integration, we've done that within finance. We have our first big system cut over at the beginning of this year, where we're bringing all of our acquisitions onto. In one of our particular business areas, our science, engineering, technology business was where most of the acquisitions have occurred, and we're bringing them all onto one platform. We actually, with the acquisition we did last year that I mentioned, they had implemented Workday and some other integrated end-to-end solutions in the staffing space, and so we're actually reverse integrating. We're ultimately scaling that platform up for the full enterprise of Kelly over the next 2 to 3 years. But this initial cutover at the beginning of 26 is bringing all the acquisitions in that business unit onto that platform. We've done some acquisitions in the education area. Those have been integrated into the legacy Kelly platforms. There's one small one left that we haven't done yet. So we're making good progress. And I would say really the rest of the work is less about integration and more about Kelly's technology modernization process. Most of the integration will be done by the end of this year.
Nice. Thank you for that. Troy, we always like to ask for a finance strategic moment or a moment of strategic insight that helped shape your approach to finance leadership along the way. Can you share a finance strategic moment with us from your career, a time when finance played a more strategic role than expected, changing how the business competed or how you led eventually as a CFO? Anything come to mind?
I mentioned the investor relations role that I took at Xerox, and there was a challenged business unit back in the services business that I'd come out of that was creating, not insignificant challenges for the company from a financial results perspective. There were surprises, some troubled contracts that we had to take some write-offs on that had not been communicated well. Ursula and Burns and Kathy Michaels placed me in that business as the CFO for the business unit. It was about almost $2 billion business, to help solve the business challenges, partner with that business unit president and solve those business challenges, and B, help solve some of the challenges from a communication and information flow perspective. We went in, dug in on the contracts, figured out what the challenges were, renegotiated and restructured where we needed to. There was still some pain to be had, but at least we understood what it was and were able to communicate that effectively, and the company was able to plan accordingly. We shut down another business area based on a recommendation I made. The prior mentality was, no, well, let's find a way to save it. Let's find a way to save it. I can produce the evidence that said, no, there's no saving. We just need to accelerate the exit. Again, I think everybody knew it was coming, just nobody was willing to say it. But I think we would have wasted probably another 2 years of trying to invest in it, trying to save it, trying to go a different direction, and unsuccessfully. And I think it just would have been a lot of energy unsuccessfully spent.
Great insight there for us. Thank you. We always like to have you think back again about your first time in a CFO role, first time with that leadership responsibility. That first quarter that you occupied the CFO office. If you could go back in time, you had observed CFOs up close. You had known everything about the role. But there must have been something you wish someone had told you. And thinking back to that first 60 or 90 days, what is it that you would go back and tell yourself?
Well, in my first 90 days as the Universal Technical Institute CFO, day 30, the CEO was changed. And then we didn't have a general counsel. We didn't have a CHRO. My first time as in the seat of a public company CFO. So I don't think there was any way to prepare for that. And by the way, the next 90 days, COVID hit. We also had to go to market and raise capital, which we did like the week before the market crashed with COVID. So there was a lot of, and as span of 6 months, that first CFO job, I don't think anybody could have told me anything to get ready for that. But when I look back just more broadly and think about it, the focusing on the soft skills just as much as the technical and harder skills, and just being a hard worker. But I think focusing on those soft skills, whether it's building relationships, whether it's networking, just people engagement. Not that I didn't do it. I've always been more of a hard charger through my career, and probably focused a little bit, over-indexed a little bit more on just the hard work and technical side of things. But I think and now as I've matured, I spend a lot more time networking and getting involved in CFO events and things along those lines. But I think, really focusing on those skills all the way through your career, just as much as you focus on the hard work and building your technical capability is an important thing that, I don't know that anybody really ever counseled me on it, per se.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect on the personal side of things. You've been there just a year, so there must be many things your colleagues still don't know about you. But we're looking for that one thing what's one thing that many people don't know about you, something, an interest you have, a pursuit from your past, anything?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I played college football for a few years. Notice I didn't say 4 years, because I realized very quickly within a few years that I wasn't going to make the NFL. So I focused on the building those technical skills. But I have one career interception to my credit, and so I don't talk about it a whole lot, but it comes up every now and then. So I don't think a lot of people know that about me.
What about a book or a resource for us? Anything influenced your thinking along the way? Maybe you just like to escape with something. Don't know.
Yeah, a book that was really impactful for me. I'm not a huge book reader. Do a lot of scanning of information. There's just so many sources of information these days. But a book that was really impactful for me, and it's a bit aged at this point, but was The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen. It was probably the first business book I read outside of being in educational environment, and just the whole concept of disruption and how you just need to constantly disrupt yourself. And it was a really impactful book for me. And of course, there's a series of books that he wrote over the years, but something to look at, an oldie but a goodie, I would say.
Great choice.
For
great
people
choice
to keep
for us.
in
Thank
mind.
you for that. So we are up to our final question, where we ask you to look forward finally. And what we're interested in are your priorities for the coming 12 months as CFO of Kelly Services. What would those be?
Well, we're going to continue affecting the finance transformation and our integration efforts. That's a huge priority. Certainly, new CEO I mentioned. So he's 45 days in the seat, and so we're charting the path forward. We have our first earnings release coming up together here in a few weeks, and so really building out that relationship and our management model. Now, both of us new to the company. He's been in the industry his whole career, so I'm new to the company and industry, year in. But so that's a really important part. And look, we talked about AI, and I think just data analytics, AI. I mentioned we're working on a balanced scorecard. So there's still a lot of work we have to do, foundational work we have to do, and a lot of opportunity for us to really take how we run the business and how we communicate amongst ourselves as a leadership team and with the investment community and the like. And so we've got a lot of great opportunities ahead of us to work on, and a pretty clear path I think we need to go down to execute against.
Troy Anderson, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack.